So I've been a big fan of RPGs, especially JRPGs, for about 5 years now. Kingdom Hearts was the first one that I played, then after that it was Tales of Zestiria, then Final Fantasy Type 0, and then after that it's just been a downward spiral of buying more and more, and then sadly, it's gotten to the point where I haven't even completed about half of my library. I was buying more and more games and trying to broaden my horizons while, at the same time, I was becoming burnt out. There was a bunch of reasons why I was getting exhausted of not just new RPGs, but games in general, whether it be DLC, rushed development cycles, millions and millions of dollars being put into a game that will be forgotten within a year's time. Take your fucking pick. But there was one game that I played that made me become optimistic for the medium again. It lacked the issues of recent games while combining my love for RPGs with my love for visual novels and hack and slash games. It even reminded me of my gaming origins dating back to the 6th generation of consoles. Akiba's Trip: Undead and Undressed was developed by Acquire in 2014 and is actually a sequel to a Japanese PSP game of the same name. But it's an anthology series, so that game not being localized doesn't affect your enjoyment of this one at all. However, Undead and Undressed initially wasn't all that well received, nor was it well known. During its first week in Japan, it only sold 53,706 copies on the initial systems it was released on, but after being localized to the US, being re-released on PS4 and PC, and being showcased in videos by multiple anime YouTubers, Game Grumps, and even PewDiePie, the game gained a little notoriety online. It was known as that one addictive anime game where you strip vampires, or something to that effect. And addictive it is. I've achieved 35 out of the 46 trophies available, I've got every ending for every girl, and I've spent a little over 24 hours in game time, which may sound super short to RPG fans, but it works in this game's favor. An initial average playthrough can vary from about 8 to 10 hours, but you need to play the game 4 times to achieve every ending. So that short runtime, along with being able to carry over your buffed up weapons and clothes, makes replaying the game seem less daunting for those who don't usually do that sort of thing. And the different endings doesn't just mean that a different cutscene plays after the final boss, it completely affects your playthrough. At a certain point in the game early on, you make a choice, and from there on, each different playthrough varies vastly, which not only keeps the player guessing, but it adds even more to that replayability factor. And if you couldn't tell by now, I absolutely love this game. It's been about 2.5 years since I've bought my copy, and it still stands out amongst my entire collection as one of my favorites. And despite how cheap it looks due to it originally being a Vita game, it still has so much care and so much work put into it. It's got character models and clothes from works such as Genshiken, Disgaea, and Super Sonico. While that sounds really inconsequential, it shows that the game knows its audience. It knows that as fans of anime and otaku culture, seeing these properties gives the game a sense of care behind it as well as a sense of realism. The game even uses an accurate layout of Akihabara for the open world, complete with real landmarks, real ads, and real stores. Now, while this may sound like obnoxious product placement to some, to me, it's almost like world building. It makes the game feel like an odd anime-esque time capsule where publicly fighting vampires is acceptable. And speaking of fighting, its gameplay has an odd, clunky vibe to it that, along with its accurate depiction of Akihabara, reminds me of the original Yakuza game. Its small, segmented parts of the city feel dense and lived in, and its gameplay, while fun, is incredibly clunky. However, there's a certain charm to the city and the characters that makes you just want to keep playing for hours and hours. And despite wanting to drone over how much I love this game, I think it's time to address that elephant in the room. The fuck do you want? The stripping aspect and all-around perversion in this game isn't really like other anime games. This isn't something like Galgun or Senran Kagura, where the TNA sometimes feels like it's just as much of a selling point as the gameplay. Number 1, there is no full nudity. I completely understand if you're not trying to see some anime titty, and avast, there is none. The worst you see is someone in their underwear. There's nothing to worry about. And number 2, the nudity is pretty much played off as a joke. Yeah, with a subtitle like Undead and Undressed, you'd think this game would be all about that hentai. But no, the game isn't really lewd at all. It actually has an extremely self-aware tone. It takes pot shots at the main characters for being otaku, there's a side mission where you have to beat up a crazed yaoi fan, and the main villain's entire goal is to suck the life force from anime fans because they don't contribute to society. That's pretty fucking great. And now, with all of my points made, I think it's time to end this video.
But Justice, what about the sequel to the anime, you bitch?
Fuck. Yes, this game did well enough that it warranted not only a sequel, but an anime adaptation. Let's start off with the latter since that's the only one I've experienced firsthand. Akiba's Trip, the animation, is very forgetful. While I haven't heard too much about the show as a whole, and I didn't even get past the first episode myself, from what I've heard, it's apparently just fine. From what I've seen, it's just another seasonal anime that everybody forgot about as soon as it aired. Again, it's fine, there's nothing offensive or god-awful, but there's nothing memorable either. I just don't think that this specific game is one that's able to handle the shift to anime. This game is about becoming engrossed in the city and its people and wanting to protect it from vampires by taking their clothes off all while dressed as a horror supersonico. And I don't think watching a group of people doing that same thing has a similar effect. But that's just my 2 cents. Maybe I'll give it a second chance. Most likely not. And then we get to Akiba's Beat, which introduced a few changes for the series. Instead of anime, this game focuses on the music side of otaku culture in Akiba, which is a genuinely great idea that I'd love to see focused on. And instead of being a visual novel, hack and slash, and an RPG, this game is apparently just a standard RPG complete with random encounters, which completely sucks out most of the charm that the previous game had. Yeah. Despite looking and sounding like a decent sequel, this game is apparently soulless and is nothing like its predecessor. Now, I haven't personally played it, but it's kind of hard to have high hopes when Destructoid's review says this, quote, "If Akiba's Trip is the shirtless jock who kicks the door in with beers in hand, Akiba's Beat is the timid cocktail drinker standing in the corner with one hand in his pocket, technically functional, but spiritually dead." End quote. Well, that's a fucking bummer. I'll try to stay neutral until I buy a copy for myself and make up my own opinions on a possible video in the future, but I'm not sure the future for that video and for this series looks very bright. It's a shame to see such a great game have some not so great follow-ups. But I'm just glad that this game got so much attention, even if that 10 minutes of fame did die out, the game called back into obscurity. But I'm here to dig it back up and show its odd beauty to more people. Akiba's Trip showed me that you don't have to hype up a game for almost a decade, or spend millions and millions of dollars in development to make an RPG from a big studio be good and make money. This game has so much more focus and care put into it than something like Star Wars Battlefront 2. Just don't automatically write this game off because it's got some anime titty or because it's an RPG. Just give it a chance. Akiba's Trip may have been an accidental gem that can't be replicated even by its own creators, but damn does it still shine bright all on its own.